Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome to a special edition of the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday, September 21st, 2025. This is a live podcast at Rate Field inside the Leinenkugel's Craft Cave for the Chicago White Sox Fan Appreciation Day. It's the last home game of the 2025 season, and the White Sox are hosting a podcast row, much like the Super Bowl. On this podcast episode, we'll feature live interviews with White Sox personnel. Gene Watson, the Chicago White Sox Director of Player Personnel, will join the show to chat about the White Sox efforts in adding new players, both in the Major League Baseball draft and the upcoming offseason. Then the White Sox Chief Marketing Officer, Brooks Boyer, will join the show to talk about the CHSN broadcast future and what's going on with the new stadium plans after the Chicago City Council approved the Chicago Fire's new stadium development at Project 78. Join us from the White Sox, Chicago White Sox Director of Player Personnel, Gene Watson. Gene, thank you so much for coming on the Sox Machine Podcast.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So what was the highlight of 2025 for you, Gene?
Well, I think there's a lot of things you can point to that were positives. I think the emergence of Kyle Teal certainly has been one positive. Edgar Caro and his ability to come up and perform to some degree. And then Colson Montgomery just, to do what he did. And I actually got to speak to him this week about, the commitment on his part to, know you're off to a rough start, totally hit the reset button, go back to Arizona and buy into what the plan was for the organization, and the vision for him were certainly three big highlights. And, it's not easy when you're a young player coming to the major league level. You could be the most talented player, but the minor leagues to the major leagues is from here to the moon. It's never been a wider gap than ever. And so for these guys to come up and to adjust to, getting to the ballpark and living in a major market and managing the expectations of the fans and your families and ticket requests and public appearances, and to still have to go out there and perform, it's a high demand. It's a lot of pressure for young players, and these guys all did a tremendous job. And that's what kind of makes it exciting for next year, is now they come into spring training, they know what to expect when they get to Chicago, and that's certainly where we're going to see a lot of growth next year.
So, Gene, about Colson in particular, because he broke my brain a little bit. When we look at it from like an analysis standpoint, and now we have StatCast in AAA, when the White Sox called him up, when you look at his season numbers, he was struggling in AAA. But then he gets to the major leagues and he's hitting better in Chicago than he was in Charlotte. Have you ever seen that before in your career?
Rare, and you can look around the league, and I won't say names, but you can look around the league where very talented young players were dominating in AAA and got to the major league level and really struggled. And so that's rare. But again, it speaks to his work ethic, his preparation, his makeup, and the people around him, the support structure to make him feel confident every time he steps into that batter's box. And I told him this week, just an amazing job with a lot more to go.
Does that change the way maybe going into next year, it's not so much about the numbers of guys who are ready to join Chicago? A good example is like Hagen Smith. He just had an outstanding start in the postseason for Birmingham, and it wasn't a season that Noah Schultz wanted. But when you guys are making decisions next year to call up players, Brady Montgomery is another one. Is it more about how they are looking on the field versus the numbers they're actually putting up?
No, I think it's definitely how they're looking, and you know, the other thing is like the players will tell you, and we're in a time now where, you know, it's such a fast track to the major leagues. Guys are blowing through the minor leagues to get to the big leagues, but to me, like, the players will tell you. They'll tell you in their preparation. They'll tell you in the quality of their at bats, or the quality of their starts, or their quality of their appearances in the bullpen. And so, you know, we're looking forward and excited about getting these guys blended into what we have up here now and what's potentially to come.
No, that's really helpful, Gene, because we've been podcasting about the White Sox for 12 years, and it always seemed like a numbers game. Like they had to hit a certain number or check things off the box performance-wise before getting called to Chicago. So that's really good insight going into next season. You helped out with the MLB draft efforts. I caught you on ESPN watching Liam Doyle throw a 7-inning no-hitter, Tennessee against Texas A&M. It was you and Jim Thome. So how would you help this year with the MLB draft efforts?
Well, it's a lot of fun, and you know, we really have a collaborative effort, you know, led by Mike Shirley, and just a tremendous amateur scouting department. They've done a tremendous job in the 2 years I've been here. But it's pretty much, you know, the targets that we feel like are going to be in play for the number one, and as you get into those picks, you know, you're picking up 4, 5, 6, 7 guys along the way, and traveling with Jim Thome is not a negative. It's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun together. But you know, he's such a you know, for a Hall of Famer, he loves the game and loves to pour into players and dive into players. And so we would essentially, you know, get to these college campuses a day early and meet with all their players and get to know their makeup. You get a little more access when you're with Jim Thome.
Okay.
And so we would get there early, meet with the players, talk to them, you know, who were the engaging players, who were the ones that kind of shied away, and just to get to know the coaches and what the players are about. And that information's invaluable. Whenever you can pick up, you know, a player's makeup and what they're made about on the inside is really big. So it was a lot of fun, and you know, I probably saw, you know, 60, 70 players and enjoyed the process and look forward to doing it again next year.
Yeah, and Tennessee's a good program to be very good friends with these days.
Yeah, Tony Vitello recruited my son when he was at TCU, and
wow, okay.
Yeah, I actually threw batting practice to one of their assistant coaches, and Frank Anderson's son was from our high school in Georgetown, Texas, when Frank was at Texas. So we have a great relationship with Tennessee, but we have a great relationship with a lot of programs across the country. And so when you're talking about bringing players into the White Sox system and the brand of not just player but person you're looking for to blend into your players, it's important to be able to get that kind of makeup.
Was that one of the first things that you noticed joining the Chicago White Sox organization from Kansas City? Did you feel like you had to restart relationships or build new partnerships, especially like even like on the college front, like that example?
I don't think so. You know, Mike's been here a long time. Mike drafted Chris Getz, and he's been here a long time. And our amateur cross-checkers and area scouts do a tremendous job. I mean, you know, there's a little bit of separation from the pro to the amateur, but I can tell you that as I go into these ballparks and be with our scouts and talk to other scouts, we're getting a ton of positive feedback in the relationships that we have. Yeah, really good.
So with the scouting news that just came through, podcast listeners, if you didn't get this news, Major League Baseball is now incorporating what is known as a dead period for scouting over the winter. How does this impact the White Sox, Gene? Because it looks like from on the high school front, it's October through January, and for the college game, it's November through January. Does that impact you guys from scouting amateur or college players?
Well, I'll speak on a personal level. You know, my son, you know, played 6 years of professional baseball, and he was a two-sport player, and it felt like it was a little too much in the wintertime. The in-home meetings and the constant, you know, data gather and the constant, you know, but everybody sees it different. The fact of the matter is, this what I was saying earlier, is it's all about the relationships and you know, missing the time period that you're going to miss to allow players to kind of decompress and you know, take a mental break is not a bad thing. And if you're doing, you know, the right things during the regular period, you're going to continue to grow and thrive as a scouting department.
If they play other sports, are you going to be allowed to watch them play those sports if you still wanted scouts? Like if they played basketball, like Colson Montgomery was a basketball player. If you wanted to see what Colson Montgomery was doing on the basketball court,
that's a great question. I don't
could a scout go?
I would think so. I would think that'd be hard.
Because it's not baseball.
Yeah, I would think that would be hard to keep track of, but that's a great question.
Okay, so we'll keep that in mind, podcast listeners, to see if any teams start doing that. When handling the pro scouting side, Gene, I'm assuming you have reports for some, maybe a book of reports for upcoming free agents. When you are with fans looking ahead to the offseason, and we have this at Sox Machine where they get to be Chris Getz, they get to play general manager, the offseason plan project, and they get to make cases of why the White Sox should sign these free agents. For our listeners, when looking ahead to the free agent class, what are some of the strengths that you see from a position player group?
Well, we're meeting as a group for the first time tomorrow, and then we'll have a big group call on Wednesday where we literally go through every free agent. We leave absolutely no stone unturned, because as your scouts talk about the players, say 2 years ago, that you're connecting the dots on the talent and the information, the health, everything. And so we're very diligent in talking about every player. We don't assume anything. We don't assume money. We don't assume fit. You don't know if another club's going to call and maybe trade for a player. Then I'll make you an offer you didn't know you were going to get, and now that leaves a hole. So we literally comb through every player and talk about the player, the performance, the makeup in the clubhouse. How does it blend into what we're trying to do? What's the health of the player? And then the finances. And Josh Barfield and Jen Wong do a tremendous job. Daniel Zine, they all three do a tremendous job. And again, relationships with the agents. Jen and Josh have been dealing with agents for 15, 20 plus years. And so that trust that you have when you're talking to an agent and you say, look, this is our vision for the player, this is our goal, this is what we'd like to accomplish, that trust between the agent and our front office is big in winning the ties on players. And so, but to say that we're focused on any one thing right now, we're going to work tomorrow at 11 o'clock and all week long and going through every player potentially that's going to be a free agent. And then you have the 20Ds that come available, and you have the minor league free agents, and you have the injured guys that are coming back. That we comb through every player every day. So
did that help on the Rule 5 side? Because to get Shane Smith and Mike Vassell, not just to have them on the team, but Gene, the type of production that the White Sox got. I mean, they got an all-star from the Rule 5 draft. That's the second time that's ever happened.
I was with the Marlins when we got Danny Uggla also.
So was this part of that process, combing through, being able to discover those guys?
100%. And what I would say to you, and this is not lip service, this is factual. Like, I've been here 2 years. The synergy between the front office, the scouting department, the research and development, the sports science is second to none. I mean, we communicate constantly about players, and nobody's ever going to agree on players all the time. It's not possible. But then it comes down to context, and then it comes down to the fit of the player at that time. And there could be a player that's available today that the context isn't good and the fit's not good, and 6 months from now it is. But our communication between R&D and sports science and the scouting department, I would put it up. It's second to none. It's so great to work with these guys every day. They're open-minded. We qualify everything we do. And when you get to players where it's a unanimous consensus, this is something we need to do, it's really exciting. And that was the case with both Shane Smith and Vassell.
Are you surprised with how well Shane pitched this year? Was this the expectation?
I don't think you, like we said earlier, I don't think you ever know what a player is going to do when they get to the big leagues. But I do know this: fierce competitor, great makeup, works incredibly hard. And when you have those three things, I've been a part of, Joaquin Soria and Brad Keller and Danny Uggla, a lot of Rule 5 picks. And the one common denominator is, you're not thinking about April 1st. You're thinking about August 1st when the managers, it's the dog days of summer, and the manager's got to get the kid in the game, and your roster's up against some flexibility issues, and the catcher's got to manage it, and your pitching coach and bullpen coach have to manage it. It's not just about, hey, can we get him to opening day? It's about, what did the dog days look like in the summer? And these were easy decisions for us, and they've both done tremendous.
So you're in this meeting, Chris Getz looks at you, and let's pretend I'm Chris Getz, and I'm like, Gene, before we start offseason planning, where are we from a strength perspective? Where are the White Sox strongest after the 2025 season?
I think it's the core players. I think it's Teal and Cuero and Montgomery and Mydroth. And you look at those four guys, you want to try to not only build around them, but blend in some good leaders, some guys that are going to, teach them, a little bit more about the day-to-day of the major leagues, because, now that they're a little bit more comfortable next year, the expectation to execute every day, to take care of the little fundamentals, to move runners, to play good defense, to run the bases well, becomes even greater. And when you can surround your core around a group of players that can help teach that along the way, it's a big deal. And so those are the things we're really focusing on.
So is that like the reasons why we see guys like Mike Tauchman and Michael A. Taylor get
100%,
signed by the team?
100%. And truthfully, and I think this, is like, when you're in the position we're in and it's a rebuild, there are going to be a class of free agents that, they want to go to the bigger markets where they have a chance to win. And there's going to be a class of free agents that are going to be very attracted to the city of Chicago and what we're doing. And so, Josh and Jen, and they do a tremendous job of conveying a message. Chris, they do a tremendous job of conveying a message. And sometimes, and I've lived this in 3 other organizations, some of the players are excited about coming and being a part of what's going on, and Will Venable is a tremendous leader, tremendous person, and so that's going to be an attraction. Our vision for the organization, Will Venable's leadership style and the way he manages, and the city of Chicago don't hurt in trying to bring players to us.
And then finally, on the flip side, I'm Chris Getz. Gene, where do we need help right now this offseason to be a little bit better or put ourselves in a position to be more competitive in 2026?
Well, I think it begins and ends on the mound. I think we all know that, and that's where it's so competitive, because when you're up against certain markets that can be a little more aggressive financially, that's where you're up against it. But Brian Bannister and our pitching group do a tremendous job of selling a vision and what we're trying to do, and we have that in place. But pitching is always going to be the currency of the game. When you talk about how fast pitchers are getting to the big leagues now, the number of injuries, you got to be very creative in the way you view pitching, which made Shane Smith and Vassell very pretty easy decisions for us, because there was a lot of ceiling and minimal risk at the time for where we were. So we'll continue to evaluate those situations. Again, we leave no stone unturned. We talk about every player. They could be a 6-year free agent having a great year in AAA somewhere. They could be a guy that missed the second half that's a 6-year free agent due to injury, and we may be getting him back next July, and we don't know. But we literally go through every player. We're constantly talking to players and agents and combing through to try to put the best roster we can together when we get to Glendale, Arizona.
Well, I want to thank you, Gene, for joining the Sox Machine podcast. Podcast listeners, again, that's Gene Watson, the Director of Player Personnel of the Chicago White Sox, joining me here at the Fan Appreciation Podcast Row in Lightning Kugel's Craft Cave. Gene, best of luck this offseason.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
I know it's going to be busy. We'll see you guys down in Orlando for the winter meetings. James Fegan will be in Vegas to bug you guys during the GM meetings. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Always here for you guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace, so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school, and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words, correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at Babbel.com/Blue Wire. Get up to 55% off at Babbel.com/Blue Wire, spelled BABBEL.com/Blue Wire. Babbel.com/Blue Wire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
A special appearance joining me on Podcast Row. You won't believe this, podcast listeners. Coming all the way down from the press box to join me in the Craft Cave is none other than James Fegan. James, how's it going?
Great. The back route I took here that no public person should ever follow me on worked as well as I hoped.
Awesome. No, this has been very fun by the White Sox hosting this podcast row. I hope that they do bring it to Sox Fest, because this, at least for me on a podcast front, makes it a lot easier, especially when you pull all the players and personnel to do one-on-one interviews like this. But James, I have to admit, I've been at Riot Fest all weekend, and I missed a lot of action between the White Sox and the Padres. So what should our podcast listeners, what's been the most important information you've learned over the weekend, talking to Will Venable about this last home series, then going into the final road trip of the season?
I'm maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, because what I thought was most interesting was talking to Bannister for a half hour.
Okay.
As far as
what did Bannister have to say?
Well, obviously they're optimistic about Hagen Smith. He kind of mirrored out what's kind of changed his mechanics and what was causing him to kind of lean forward in his delivery and causing a lot of wildness. They kind of think he's always going to walk people, but they saw the velo spike when they changed him to this kind of leg kick that he kind of compared to what Verlander and Zach Wheeler both do. And so when they saw him hit 99 out of his kind of new delivery, they've been trying a lot of different things. They said that the velo dip we saw earlier in the season was another experiment that just didn't take.
Okay.
But they felt like they're on the right road because his stuff ticked up right when they do it. So they feel like they've gotten him in a good place by the end of the season. And conversely, talking more about Noah Schultz and how much the knee affected him all year, I haven't gotten someone say yes to is this season kind of a wash, but it's hard to analyze anything he was doing knowing that his delivery was unstable every time he planted his leg. So his velo being down, his slider going weird, his control being off. It's that's all from the knee. So what do we do with any of these results? It affected him for months.
Yeah.
It's not a wasted season per se to get innings in. He's not starting from zero next year, but it's hard to really analyze anything he did in some significant way because he was hurt all year.
Yeah, because we just had Gene Watson on the show, and I asked Gene about as the organization philosophy moving forward about promoting players, using Colson Montgomery, for example. We've talked about it all the time, how Colson's hit better in Chicago than in Charlotte. Is it going to be numbers-based, or is it going to be based on what you guys see from a scouting perspective? And he said it's about what we see. So I bring that to the fold with Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz next year, James. I don't feel like Hagen Smith's going to be in the minor leagues much longer. If they like what they see from him now with the new delivery and making the adjustments, and he has a strong April, let's say, in Birmingham or Charlotte, despite not having a great 2025 season, he could be with the White Sox next year.
I mean, Chris Getz said it was basically the plan for them to at least have a shot to compete to make the roster out of spring next year.
Wow. Okay.
And neither of them have really performed to a level with that, but Smith being healthy right now, he's probably the easier one to see of just if he just shoves from here on out, pitches really well in the NFL, comes out of spring looking great, maybe he's either one to force the issue, where Schultz, you obviously have to see what it looks like post-rehab and how healthy he is, and you'd like for him to pitch well in Charlotte or something like that. I think in general they've probably made it less likely, but Smith's probably the one who's pitching right now where you could squint and be well, if he just keeps this up. Where they are kind of different. They're Smith's going to be more erratic control-wise, kind of always, and then Schultz is probably looks like someone who will avoid blow-up outings with his control when it's right, but obviously we haven't seen that for him since 2024 because of the knee. But yeah.
So could Hagen Smith have if he has a similar spring training as Shane Smith, which blew us away, surprised us with the velocity? If Hagen's bumping 98, 99 in Arizona and during the spring, I guess we could revisit this conversation when you're there in Arizona for us in February. But looking ahead, because off-season planning, and Gene said that our weakness right now is pitching, we need to address it in free agency this upcoming off-season. Could Hagen Smith be part of that conversation when people are doing off-season plan projects, James, on building a opening day 2026 starting rotation?
I would lean more to saying you should factor in the bulk of his innings being the majors.
Okay.
The one thing about opening day is you have to weigh in his usage and how many innings he's actually going to get up to this year. It's probably pretty hard to sign him up for 150 innings next season, and maybe that's what you do if you promote him at the start of the year. So that'd be a consideration. But yeah, I definitely think he's probably at least the fun conversation in spring training of look at this guy. Smith obviously had the deck stacked for him as a Rule 5 pick. They had to carry him in some form to really keep him. But I think he's probably in a similar boat of someone you're jumping out oh, is this stuff looking good to pitch in the majors right now? And then that kind of drives the conversation.
How was seeing Jose Abreu back?
Interesting. It was kind of especially with Anthony Rizzo happening like the week before, you wonder, like, was there more of like something they weren't saying, a little bit hiding the ball about what sort of announcements there was going to be. Sox people from the start said, like, he's just coming here to be at the park, say hello. It's an attraction to have him here, and nothing behind to it. And that's kind of how it played out. He met with media. He addressed the fans on Saturday night. They had segments of him waving the booth, and everyone cheered, and that was great. Especially knowing that, like, he didn't get that kind of reception in 2022.
No, he did not. Yeah,
and he maintained his choice on that he doesn't like doing that, but. As far as like, are you retiring, or why are you here in general? There wasn't really like this big answer. Other than, like, they asked him to, and he showed up, and he's happy to be here. It seems like, obviously he hasn't played in a bit, and he kind of joked about, like, I'm a little heavy to be playing right now. And he's 38 and turning 39 in January. It seems like it's that, but that's clearly not what he came here to do. Miguel Vargas is thrilled, both, and he said as much, and to segue, he says Abreu's been like somebody he talks through the offseason and helps him like throughout for years now. But to segue to your original question of what happened this weekend, I think maybe the thing that stuck out to me is Vargas. It's a little bit like mid-season Vargas, and we've been watching maybe slowly slide down from the excitement of his initial hand adjustment. But it's worth mentioning. He's gone on the IL twice since the All-Star break. There's been a reason maybe we haven't seen him in sync in the second half, and he's probably the person who stood out, especially in the series against San Diego, is looking a bit more like, this is a long-term piece, as opposed to like, this is a nice role player that we've been probably looking at in the last 6 weeks or so. And I've been talking a lot, and I was arguing with fans in the comments when the games were last night about, like, they're coming in the spring next year with Vargas, Sosa, Meade, Ramos out of options, which necessitates probably at some point, like, not carrying one and thus putting one up for waivers or trading one. I think the more realistic, like, if I was to rank those two in terms of importance, those four in terms of importance, I'd probably go Vargas, Sosa, Meade, Ramos at this point. But
I agree.
Does that mean the top end of that is trade candidates? Does that mean the bottom end of that gets DFA'd and you hope he clears waivers at the end of the spring? I'd probably lean more towards the latter scenario, but I think the former scenario is worth visiting. But I think with the way it gets talked about Vargas this week, saying, like, we think there's still another level he can get to, I think Vargas is probably a pretty safe member of the score going forward and performing like it. But it's a foursome that I have my eye on in this offseason, certainly a lot. And definitely, obviously, in the spring if they're all still here.
And then the final question, as the team embarks on its final week of the 2025 season, anyone chasing anything? Anyone telling you that they're trying to accomplish this before the final week as the White Sox travel to Yankee Stadium? And, of course, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters at Sox Machine. We are sending James to Washington, D.C. to cover the final 3 games of the season.
Well, Lanine's looking pretty good to lead the team in homers because he's got a little 3 advantage on Colson, who's kind of the real person who could put a surge into it, and Benintendi's been out with leg issues that are kind of vague, but I've been keeping him out of the lineup, and they certainly have enough people to throw Dominic Fletcher or Will Robinson in there and not feel like they're lacking for a lefty bat. Not enough to impact that, but they're not going to force him back in because there's no one to play sort of situation. Shane Smith is very much of the mindset of, I'm trying to get as many innings as I can so I don't run into restrictions next year, and they've been kind of letting him fly down the stretch here. And
will he make that last start of the season?
Yeah, he's scheduled to. The only TBA left on the season is Tuesday, which is Martin Perez, his old slot, which Venable said could be Jonathan Cannon, could be Owen White. You can see openers for that. I'd probably be a little more talking to Bannister. Cannon's certainly fix some stuff in the offseason territory more than probably a great start to clear it out, but he'd probably be the more interesting one to watch just for his state of affairs at this point. Something Bannister mentioned that I thought was curious and maybe not relevant for listeners seeing this after Burke starts on Sunday, but they feel that, and Burke feels as well, the sinker, the changeup he's working on has kind of screwed up his slider all year.
Oh.
And the remedy for that is to just never practice. He still needs a sinker and changeup. He's been told to never throw it and catch play again, pretty much. The only times he throws it is in games. Because when he
how do you know I have feel for it?
Because when he reps it that much, he starts throwing off his slider, and he feels like slider command has been, bad. So he's basically been told, like, yeah, still use it. Just go in the games and rip it as hard as you can, and we'll see what happens. And it's, this
What a wild.
You were making the same facial expression I was making at Sean on Saturday as he's explaining this. Is like, how do you just let something go in Major League game without having, like, practice it? And he's like, I guess I'll get used to it. But yeah, they just told me, like, I mean, he said when I initially got to, like, Charlotte, they were telling me, like, your sinker's, one, it's throwing off your slider. Two, all your practicing of it has not improved its movement profile since you first started throwing it. So the sinker's still kind of been what it was not practicing it, and now he feels like he's got a better feel for his breaking stuff since he's come back. So ideally, you're listening to this after he had a good start, but maybe that's a little bit of, maybe what his next start is. Maybe that's about what he looks like next season is not practicing the sinker and the changeup ever, because it's a totally different, like, wrist orientation, whereas his bread and butter is landing that slider and landing that curveball. And he feels like he's had to consciously work to get it to the other side of the plate because he's throwing himself off with his orientation of how he's throwing his sinker. So pitching's crazy was my one takeaway from that conversation, but it provides an interesting thing for him to watch on the stretch.
That is wild. I've never heard of that, and yeah, to your point, it'll be interesting to see on how Cannon looks on Sunday, and then something to watch for during the offseason and, of course, spring training. Again, you can follow James on social media, guys, at JR Fegan, and a reminder, we are sending him to Washington, D.C. to cover the final 3 games of the 2025 season. I'll save some of those questions because I asked Brooks what was his highlight of the year, Gene what was his highlight of the year. We'll talk about that, podcast listeners, in an upcoming podcast episode after the regular season concludes. But James Fegan, thank you so much for coming down from the press box and joining me in Podcast Row on Fan Appreciation Day for the White Sox.
Thanks for having me.
Now joining me on Podcast Row at the White Sox Fan Appreciation Day, the last home game of the 2025 season, is the Chief Marketing Officer for the Chicago White Sox. It is Brooks Boyer. Brooks, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Always great to be here.
What was your highlight of the 2025 season?
I think if you take a step back, seeing the overall improvement in a number of areas. Obviously coming off of a season like we came off of in 2024, when you're talking about 41 wins, it's really tough from a business perspective and a baseball perspective to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And obviously we were in a very dark place organizationally, and to bring in a new manager, to bring in some new players, to make significant moves that Chris has been able to make that can get our fans to start to take the next step with us of a rebuild that, at some point a rebuild, you can't be rebuilding forever. You come out of a rebuild. And to see what how our fans have responded this year to the young players that have come up and have performed at the big league level, to have a story like Colson Montgomery, of someone who was demoted out of the minor leagues to go get himself right, and then to come up and all of a sudden be a player that our fans really are gravitating to. So for me, the highlight is seeing the improvement in everything that we've done. Our giveaways, I think our giveaways were the best they've ever been this year. The commitment to the fans has been fantastic. The experience has been really good. Our team play has been better. Moving to a new TV network with CHSN. Certainly upgrading the way we present ourselves on TV and on radio. It's been exciting to see us take the step forward where you're in a completely dark place to now be able to see what you hope is a light at the end of the tunnel of coming out of a rebuild.
From a business perspective, when you are in that dark place, what is the mentality going into that next season? As in, it can't get any worse than this, so we have 2 options. We can either quit or try to be enthusiastic and make the best of the situation. What was that mentality coming into this year?
I'm a glass half full guy to begin with, and it is tough. I mean, we've said, as people listening to this are Sox fans, how many times, if you ask yourself honestly, okay, this has to be rock bottom, and then you found, a deeper place to go over the last few years. So we also never take for granted the fact that we're stewards of a great brand, of a great fan base, of something that we all care about. So it was last year when we were having that rough season, how are we going to roll up our sleeves? What are we going to do to make coming to the ballpark important to people or meaningful or have value? And, between Gareth Brenlin, Mike Downey, Matty Hamada, our PR team, our social team, we knew we had to lean in for the fans. And we did have a unique moment in time of 125 years of White Sox baseball, so we could celebrate why the White Sox are important to people, and maybe not make what's going on in the field the most important thing, because we can't control that.
Right.
Grown men between the white lines with a round ball and a round bat can't control that, but we can control the experience around. So we wanted to lean in on what can be the best possible fan experience. We learned a lot ourselves. You do this every year. Nothing's ever the same. And I use an analogy, if you drink a certain soda, you pop the can, you have an idea what's inside that soda every time you pop the can open. With baseball, things can change year to year. So, so season to season, month to month, sometimes week to week, heck, day to day, it seems like. So we always have to be ready for the curveball and adjust to the curveball and make this as fun as possible for the fans.
One of the big highlights at Wright Field this year was the Savannah Bananas playing here over a weekend. And I know that you were involved and you helped out with the ISFA to get that all squared away for the Bananas to play at Wright Field. Do you guys want that to happen again? Do you want the Bananas to come back?
Of course. We'd love to have the Bananas back. We did apply to have the Bananas back. Obviously there's going to be a lot of competition.
Did you hear any jealousy from the north side?
No, look, the north side would make a lot more money having a concert, or two concerts as opposed to the Savannah Bananas. No, I didn't hear anything from them about, we should have. The Savannah Bananas have now played in Yankee Stadium. They've played in Fenway. It's inevitable that they're going to end up at some point in Wrigley Field, because they've hit all the milestones of baseball. So I certainly hope that our fans or the fans of the Bananas, we put our best foot forward, and they had a great experience. I had Jesse Cole saying we're going to have the world's best lightning delay, and he sent players throughout, and we just adjusting to the curveball.
Yeah.
We adjusted and made it the best it could possibly be for the fans. So totally get it that they are on a heater right now, and everybody wants them to come play. We'd love to have them back.
Yeah, they may even be part of the 2026 MLB All-Star Game. Time will tell next year in Philadelphia. Jose Abreu came back this weekend. Could we see in a Abreu Day forthcoming? Like this year we got the Mark Burley statue.
Right.
Is something like that coming to Jose Abreu's way?
Jose Abreu still wants to play, and at some point in time, either he'll retire from the game or the game will officially retire him. But you guys saw the response from the fans to Jose Abreu. Obviously, a very important part of what we did for a number of years, and to have him back and to have him be so appreciative of the fans and make that connection. Clearly there was always a language barrier. There's still a language barrier, but fans respected the way he went about the game and how he conducted himself. He was great. It was great to have him back, his family back, to see them. I think he really realized this weekend how much he meant to White Sox fans. When you're not in the dugout and grinding and going through your routine every day, and you step away, and even though you're still active, you come back to a place like this that shows you that much love. He knows he's a White Sox forever.
So what's the plans for Sox Fest? Is Sox Fest coming back? Because I thought last year worked out really well at the Remova Theater, and it was a great show, and it was a great opportunity, if you didn't get a chance, podcast listeners, to attend Sox Fest. You had all the young players there, and it was really cool now looking back and being like, I got to chat with Chase Mydroth, and I got to learn more about Colson Montgomery, and now they're big players for the Chicago White Sox and part of this turnaround from the rebuild. So is Sox Fest coming back in 2026?
Well, I don't have anything to announce right now, but it is obviously in our best interest at this point, now that, to your point, some of these young guys that nobody knew last year during the winter, it's really important for us now to connect these young guys with our fans, let our fans understand their stories, know who they are. So it's fair to say on this podcast, on the last day of the season, that it's in our best interest to make sure that these guys are back in the city at some point.
That is fair,
but there's
Brooks.
no announcements to make at this particular time.
I tried, podcast listeners. I tried. There was a very pointed column in the Chicago Sun-Times over the weekend as far as criticism of the TV broadcast. From your point of view, Brooks, how did the TV broadcast go for the White Sox in year 2 of CHSN?
Right. Well, this is year 1 of CHSN for us. So, obviously, CHSN not having Comcast for the Bulls and the Blackhawks seasons made it a challenge, a tough start for CHSN. But our number one goal of CHSN was to put the best possible product on the air for the fans. The fans don't necessarily care as much about distribution unless it's impacting them. And clearly, when you don't have Comcast, that makes it tough. So we did finally get over that hurdle. But one of the things that I'm most proud of when you look at our broadcasts, and I give all sorts of credit to Jason Coyle, Joe Riley, all the people, Joe Collins, Chris Withers at CHSN, the show that they put on. And when you talk about going from the start of pregame with Chuck and Ozzie to the end of postgame with Chuck and Ozzie, the addition of Brooke Fletcher, the addition of Connor McKnight, you look at Stoney, who is the bar when it comes to analysts in Major League Baseball, but then you backfill the games that he's going to be out with Gordon Beckham and Dan Plesac. This is one of the best local broadcasts in baseball. I get it. We're going to win hopefully over 60 games this year, and we won 40 last year. But if you look at our broadcasts from last year, what we did last year, to everything that we're doing this year, and the growth that has been made, it's significant. And when you have our Friday night all access shows, which have been featured, I get calls from other teams saying, what are you guys doing I'm hearing about your Friday nights. Those are unique, and those are the things that in collaboration with CHSN we're always trying to set the bar higher. We did have one reporter that followed around a Friday night all access, and Scott Merkin wrote on, here's all the things that they're doing, that we're always trying to push the envelope to bring the best possible broadcast to our fans, which is going to become even more and more important. It's the first year of Will Venable. People got to hear from Will Venable during a game, and to understand how calm he is, even during games. It makes a difference of us telling the story of what's going on at Chicago White Sox. So our broadcasts are really good. I'm super proud of our broadcasts. The feedback we've gotten from fans. Can we do some things differently? Can we evolve? We're always going to look to evolve. Our personalities are going to look to evolve. So I'm really thrilled where we're at in our first year of CHSN. The delivery, the production quality, all the things that go into delivering the best experience for fans watching at home is there, and we're going to continue to push that forward.
So when it comes to the local TV, The Athletic reported from Commissioner Rob Manfred that Major League Baseball is hoping to have a local TV deal by 2028. Because right now, you guys are still on your own, right? You have to figure out your own local broadcast. Is that something that the White Sox, from your perspective, that's a good deal for you guys?
Well, it depends. Obviously, there's a lot to figure out. All the national deals for Major League Baseball are up in 2028. I think between Rob Manfred with Noah Garden at Major League Baseball, those are the two guys that are leading the charge on trying to figure out what our national TV package would look like. Obviously, you can be a little bit envious of what some of the other leagues are doing on a national basis, but I think Rob and Noah are being very pragmatic in figuring out how do we attack two issues. One is the national deal. How are we going to have our game in front of as many people as possible, a la the NFL or the NBA with their new deal that's coming this year? then how do we also, baseball is so local. The tonnage is so local with the number of games that we have and have available that we have to deliver to the local audience. Major League Baseball has taken on some teams that have had challenges in their local markets. The Padres, the Rockies, the Diamondbacks, the Twins, all go through MLB and have put their rights through MLB, but they're operating very locally. Right now with CHSN, we're in a pretty good spot being in a market like Chicago. So we'll see how this all evolves. But in the meantime, CHSN is going to be able to deliver our local games. We do now have a fully up and operating direct-to-consumer product. Coming off of where so that is good for all three teams. But coming off of where we were with NBC Sports Chicago, we had legacy deals with Hulu and with YouTube TV, two of the faster growing. Those are starting to decline because now their price is back. People are kind of running back to cable, or they're starting to put together the packages a la carte that they want to.
Right.
And that's why it was important for us to have a direct-to-consumer product so everybody in our territory can get the games, and we want our games available to as many people as we possibly can. And Major League Baseball is going to be part of that solution as we move forward closer to 2028 when all their national deals are done. So it's going to be certainly a story to follow.
So 2028, lots of TV work. 2029, the stadium lease comes up.
All right.
Project 78, City Council approved the Chicago Fire's plan, but the alderman said it's contingent on only one stadium, not two stadiums. So how does that impact the White Sox? What's the thinking right now as far as maybe building a new home?
Yeah, obviously it would be great to have a new facility. We are certainly looking at every option. We're very aware of everything that's going on around the 78 and what some of those, what other options may be. Clearly, the clock is ticking. When you look at the leases up in 2029 and there's an option year for 2030, this is something over the next 12 to 18 months that we have to resolve. There are options in the city, and we continue to have dialogue with the city and the state, to see what those options can be. Obviously, our fan base deserves a great ballpark experience, and hopefully they have that when they come here now. But there are certainly ways to improve that to also improve the franchise moving forward.
And this is where I can already hear podcast listeners poking at me audio-wise.
No, you got to ask the follow-up.
Josh asked Brooks this question.
That's the follow-up.
How does Justin Ishbia get involved? Because we heard about the deals announced by the White Sox. There's some capital investment coming. Mm-hmm. Is this an area where capital investment is going to be made? Is that kind of the direction?
Well, first and foremost, Justin is the succession plan. And for the White Sox, I think Justin will be an amazing steward of the organization. And any of the conversations I've had with him, he cares deeply about the White Sox. He's building a home here in Chicago, wants the very best for the organization and the fan base. To the extent of his involvement in a new stadium, still to be determined on what he's going to do. Massive amount of respect between the Reinsdorf family and the Ishbia family, open dialogue, and open and honest dialogue. So certainly Justin's gonna want to understand what he's ultimately getting on the back end of whenever that happens, because the decisions we're making about the new stadium or renovated stadium or whatever it could be. Certainly, that's going to be part of Justin's family moving forward. So there's a great deal of respect and dialogue that's going into a number of things, not just stadium.
You're going to have a busy and fun 4 years upcoming, Brooks. Starting 26, and then we'll see what happens at 27, right. But 28, the TV deals, 29, the stadium. You're going to have a lot of fun. Last question, and this is a fan question that I saw on social media, wondering, why did the team stop wearing the black jersey for home games this year?
Well, we have, and again, people will disagree with this, but we do have an iconic home jersey. And, the white pinstripes is an iconic home jersey. And, when you have a brand like the Chicago White Sox, if you have something that you deem to be iconic, you put your product, your players, in what is iconic. So I think you see obviously the city connects that have connected really well with the city of Chicago. We've found a nice niche for them on Friday. We did wear them, I think, on one Saturday, but you're going to see the whites at home.
And the City Connects are coming back next year.
City Connects will come back. You get 4 jerseys, and then you get the City Connect. So our 4 that we have are the white pinstriped, the road grays, the black, and our 4th is still the South Side. So we replaced the 83 that we used to wear on Sundays with the South Side, and then the City Connect is the 5th. So they call it the 4+1.
Got it. So next year, that's because that was another question. The South Side, the original City Connects, could be coming back.
We could wear those on occasion. We have the ability. You have to designate those 4 plus your City Connect. So we wanted to have the South Side be one that if we wanted to bring back for a game or a series or whatever, we have the ability to do that. Now, if we wanted to do something with the 83s, we then have to go through Major League Baseball, petition Major League Baseball to say on this special day, or sleeveless or any of the jerseys in our history. That's when we'd have to petition Major League Baseball to allow us to do it on a specific day.
Well, I always love our conversations, Brooks. Thank you.
I always love the follow-ups. always happy to do it. And the work you're doing and all the podcasters, this is our best way to speak to our true diehard fans. And just to appreciate everything you guys are doing and you're doing and all the podcasts are doing to be able to talk directly to fans. So hopefully today's been a fun day for you.
Yes, well appreciated. Again, that is Brooks Boyer, the Chief Marketing Officer of the Chicago White Sox, joined the Sox Machine Podcast for Fan Appreciation Day during the podcast row in the Leinenkugel Craft Cave. That will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Again, this special edition at the Fan Appreciation Day at Rate Field for the final home game of the 2025 season. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You could also listen and watch our videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at the Sox Machine. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. And, of course, follow our beat reporter, James Fegan, who will be joining the Chicago White Sox in Washington, D.C. for the final regular season series, the season finale against the Nationals next weekend. You can follow him at JR Fegan. To unlock all access of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox and Major League Baseball, sign up to become a Sox Machine subscriber at SoxMachine.com. Monthly plans start at $5 a month, and that gets you the ad-free version of both the podcast and website. Also unlocks the comment section for you. We still have a couple spots open in our Veterans Committee. Our VCs get an opportunity to meet with us monthly with Zoom calls as we share them with ideas that we have for the upcoming 2026 season for Sox Machine, and also have direct access to Jim and James in our group chat. Very helpful, especially since we're going to be sending James to the GM meetings and the winter meetings in November and December. So if you want some of the juicy gossip that James can't quite report on, you can get that opportunity by joining the Sox Machine Veterans Committee. So go to SoxMachine.com and inquire with it. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com, your home for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.